A couple months ago, I interviewed a feminist, getting their take on what the feminist movement represents, why they feel it's necessary. But I wanted to get the male side, why males feel that they're being oppressed, in what ways, and what we need to do to change that. Luckily, and unusually, I found two people who are willing to talk about this issue. This is the first of those two interviews.
I've spent my life pushing myself to be the strongest, and now I learn there's a power level I'll never reach on my own. And I hate that.
In today's episode, I'm joined by J. Stephen Svoboda, who is a member of the National Coalition for Men. Thank you for joining me today. My first question for you is, what does the National Coalition for Men stand for?
We stand for fair treatment of men and women, and I know that a lot of organizations say that they stand for that, and we're not disputing their good intent, but there's a lot of ways in which males are discriminated against that aren't recognized or acknowledged or understood. So certainly there's been challenges that obviously females and other groups have faced too, and we're not denying that, but we're trying to talk about a different side of things that's been less recognized.
So do you guys consider yourselves men's rights activists or something less? Where do you guys fit on that spectrum?
There's a lot of lingo out there, and words mean different things to different people. I actually think the word feminism has been used in several different ways, and I don't want to talk extensively about that. I can explain briefly what I mean, but basically, there's such a range of viewpoints, and there are what's called men's rights activists out there who have a wide variety of viewpoints. And for me, I've been doing this I've been in NCF, I've been a board member of NCFM for 21 years now. I'm the longest standing board member. And for me, I would quit today. And in fact, that was never changed. I would quit today if I got to a point where I felt like we were advocating for anything giving an advantage of one side over the other. So I don't really care I shouldn't say I don't care. I don't really know what the whole range of what's called men's rights activists are doing. And as the internet proliferates, it gets harder and harder to keep up with what everyone's up to and what terminology can migrate and broaden and change. So it's much easier not to talk about terminology, but just to talk about what we believe in and what we do. I mean, that's really a much easier discussion.
Okay, so in what ways do you feel as though men have been discriminated against gender-wise?
Well, there's a lot of different issues. I mean, one issue is that men die a lot younger than women do, and we ought to be figuring out what the reason for that is. We ought to be attacking that and using our resources and really worrying about why are men having lower quality lives and why are they not living as long? And the discrepancy is larger for minority men, but it's also true for all races. So that's one good example. I mean, another good example is males still don't get a fair shake in divorce proceedings and in custody proceedings, and there's still this perception that the mother somehow is the preferred parent, all other things being equal. And the funny thing about that is it sort of cuts against the woman too, because it's putting women in this box where, okay, well, you're the mother and that's your role and that's your historical role, and it's not really seeing everyone individually and in their full individuality and potential. So, I mean, a lot of these issues actually, I think, harm everyone, and they certainly do in the sense that if you have a mother that's been discriminated against, a wife or a husband or a son, whatever it is, that affects you too.
Okay.
So, there's those two issues. There's certainly homosexuality is something that's a lot less tolerated in males than it is in females, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think we're uncomfortable with men not being what's considered to be men, and we're not a gay rights organization at all, but we do believe that males need to receive a fair shake, as do females in every aspect of society, and that's one of them. We have these cases where men go off and fight in the service, and then they come back and they've lost custody of their children, and they're in a divorce proceeding they didn't even know was necessarily going to happen, and all sorts of things are happening, and It can happen to females too, but it's a very different playing field when you're male in these areas than when you're female.
Okay, so could you further elaborate on the things that your organization does in particular to help alleviate the discrimination that men face in our society today?
Well, we do what we can. I mean, sadly, we're an all-volunteer organization because there's a lot of funding in the government for various women's programs, and that's well known. And that's another area of really gross discrimination. I mean, the number of entities set up for men versus for women, it's just astounding, the difference. And so here we are trying to do what we can. It's all volunteer. None of us, this isn't a job for any of us. We all have other jobs and other responsibilities, and we're trying to fit this work in. And so we do what we can. I mean, we have this very talented vice president in the LA area, Mark Angelucci, who's just done a tremendous job with all sorts of lawsuits that have really changed a lot of things. We have President Harry Crouch in San Diego, who similarly, he's not a lawyer, but similarly he's done tremendous, amazing work in raising awareness in the domestic violence community in San Diego. And we do what we can. I mean, a lot of it is just to be talking to people like you and to be letting people know there's even a second side or another side to things. A lot of times people will laugh or dismiss it or think that you're opposed to women or something like that, all of which is just completely not true.
So do you see gender relations getting better to the point where we're no longer pointing the finger at the other gender and saying that you're the bad guy? Do you see more negotiation going forward? How do you see gender relations as a whole right now?
Well, I think we are. I mean, I think the work that Carrie Crouch is doing in San Diego is an aspect of that. I mean, even Mark Angelucci's lawsuits, even though they're brought in courts, you might think it's the antithesis of that. But in fact, Mark is a very negotiation, compromise, not compromise, but he's very oriented. He's a very positive, friendly person who's very oriented toward working things out. And I think in general, as an organization, we've moved much more in that direction. There are other groups out there for sure on both sides that are very antagonistic. We try not to do that the very best we can. I think we've been doing very well at that. I think there's a mix of concerns. I mean, I think the internet brings a lot of blessings to the modern world, but it also makes things harder. We've got so many distractions these days and so much workload and so many emails sitting in our inbox. And it may sound trivial, but it actually connects up because these pressures affect our ability to rethink things and step back and say, hey, take the big view and say, hey, what's best for the world and what's best for my relationship or whatever, because we're so busy just running to stay in the same place. And I think it actually does have an impact. So, I mean, on the concrete level, my experience has been that it's harder to get people out of the house these days and get them to a rally or an educational event or whatever than it was 20 years ago. I mean, you face a higher barrier because there's more things competing with you. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So that was a sort of a wide-ranging answer, which maybe wasn't as laser targeted as it could have been. But I think that in itself reflects the world that we're in. We want everybody to have opportunity to live their lives and have as full lives as they can and not be limited, and you're probably too young to remember these days, but when I was a kid, I mean, it was a totally different world in terms of what women could do and what men could do and what was expected of men and what was expected of women. I mean, totally different.
So that's all my questions. I wanted to thank you for coming on again, and if you wanted to add anything else or share any more information, feel free to go ahead and do so.
Okay. No, I would just say in conclusion, we're at www.ncfm, National Coalition for Men, the letters that start each of those words, .org, ncfm.org. And I think people hear about us at first and they think we're possibly a bunch of extremists or whatever. Just check us out. We're actually, we're good people. We've got some former National Organization for Women leaders, women who are on our board. I mean, we're a very diverse group. We're not just a bunch of males. We got women, we got minorities, we've got all sorts of people on our leadership, and we're just trying to generate a dialogue and move things to higher ground. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out my most recent episode in the top right, which is a discussion that I had with adult film actress Mia Lee on the adult film industry. You can also subscribe to my channel, or if you want more videos on this particular topic, you can click on the link on the bottom right of this video for part 2.